அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். ஜியோ உலகம் என்ற யூடியூப் சேனலினுடைய இரண்டாவது பகுதியாக இருக்கக்கூடிய கல்வி உலகத்திலே ஆங்கில இலக்கியத்தினுடைய ஒரு பகுதியாக மிகச்சிறந்த எழுத்தாளர் ஜும்பா லாஹிரி அவர்களினுடைய ஒரு சில படைப்புகளிலிருந்து எவ்வாறு வெளிநாட்டு வாழ் இந்தியர்கள், குறிப்பாக அமெரிக்காவிலே இருக்கக்கூடிய இந்தியர்கள் கஷ்டப்படுகிறார்கள், எத்தகைய போராட்டங்களை அவர்கள் எதிர்நோக்கி கொண்டிருக்கிறார்கள் என்ற சிந்தனையின் அடிப்படையிலே அத்தகைய தலைப்பை பற்றி இன்னும் சிறப்பான விதத்திலே the cultural conflicts faced by Indian immigrants in assimilation of USA situation in view of Jhumpa Lahiri's select novels என்ற தலைப்பிலே சிறிது நேரம் உரையாற்ற இதோ இங்கு வந்திருக்கிறேன். The cultural conflicts faced by Indian immigrants in assimilation of USA situation in view of Jhumpa Lahiri's select novels. Just to introduce this topic, there is no human being without conflicts in this earthly life. At the same time, the conflict varies based on the situation, lifestyle, culture, etc. The paper portrays the immigrants' conflicts that range very heavier in the foreign land. In a way, they are considered to be the marginalized ones who are deprived of the basic human rights to live on the earth because they are excluded from certain groups on the basis of gender, race, culture, and religion. The second generation immigrants are the children of first generation immigrants whose identity is fractured as they are neither born in their parents' homeland nor do they have an identity in their place of birth. Conflict in relationship between couples, families, and friends are projected in Interpreter of Maladies and the Namesake that were written by Jhumpa Lahiri. After crossing the borders of a nation, the immigrant group struggles hard and faces so many conflicts to preserve its ethnic, sociological, and cultural ties in the new land. The cross-cultural conflicts, language differences, identity crisis, man-woman relationship in the foreign land, and East-Western encounters, etc., are expressed very vividly in the novels of Jhumpa Lahiri. Everybody can see this. They all further relate to sensitive dilemmas in the lives of Indian immigrants with themes such as marital difficulties, miscarriages, and disconnection between first and second generations, etc., etc. The characters in diasporic subtexts constantly struggle to create or find a sense of stability and a peace of mind through their conflicting environments, and these conflicts ultimately lead to the absence of the peace of mind. Now let us one by one enumerate the conflict which is always portrayed or experienced in the immigrants' lives. The first one is the conflict of language. The conflict with language prevails in the lives of the immigrants mostly. When there is conflict with language, the immigrants feel that the most of their basic rights are deprived from them. In any country, the language rules everyone and the basic things are easily sought after with the help of it. That is the important thing. When one has the problem with the proper language, then the struggle arises at the situation. Nobody can escape from it. The next component of diaspora in Jhumpa Lahiri's fiction is the role of silence and miscommunication in characters' ability to negotiate culture and life in order to create a solid sense of self. When there is the miscommunication, everything is collapsed. One example we can say, Ashima experiences this and takes every step to avoid the situation in which her children are stuck up with a new language. The language which they don't know. The language which is foreign to them. The language which is something make them struggle in the foreign land. Every afternoon, before going to sleep, Ashima switches on the television and makes Gogol watch Sesame Street and the electric company in order to make him get used to the American way of speaking language. Such a risk every immigrant should take. This is normal. Normal in the sense this has to be done. There is no other go. The cultural dilemma in language begins when the doctor asks Ashima questions in a language with which she is not comfortable. One example, she is told that she is still in early labor, 3 centimeters dilated, beginning to efface. She asks, "What does it mean, dilated, doctor? Can you please explain?" So, in the novel of The Namesake, written by Jhumpa Lahiri, she asks like this. Then, at the American departmental store, Gogol's parents are not properly attended, and the cashiers smirk at his parents' English accents, and the salesman prefers to talk to Gogol as if his parents were either incompetent or deaf. The migrants maintain their language, customs, values, norms, tools, technologies, products, organizations and institutions of their homeland in the unaccustomed earth, which otherwise would have made them all worse, still worse. Then, now let us talk about the second conflict. The second conflict is the conflict of the unknown. The conflict with the unknown refers to the new situation, new persons, new environment, the unexpected events, and so on, so on, so on. The immigrants have no other way except adapting and embracing the unknown things in the foreign land. They have gone there. What to do? They have to experience. They have to face all these and adjust with them so that they may run their lives at least with the minimum happiness, with the minimum comfort. Gender played its role in the immigrant experience as the first generation male immigrants traveled across continents in order to find a better life, when the first generation female immigrants arrived in the adopted homeland on account of marriages. Growing up at the new situation, her mother's example, moving to a foreign place for the sake of marriage, caring exclusively for children and a household, had served as a warning, a path to avoid. This is a kind of disappointment on the part of the female ones. The males naturally have their own courage and boldness that automatically drive them to undertake the adventurous activities, etc., etc. But the females, by all means, they depend on their husbands. They don't know anything. They don't know achievement. They don't know the adventures. Somebody who is dependent on the husband. It is the role of the women in the foreign country. And therefore, the wives like Mrs. Sen are unable to cope up with the new environment, constantly reminiscing about the home back in India. This unknown situation makes their lives dark, worse. Everything is different in the foreign country. As found in the work of Salman Rushdie, the past is a foreign country, goes the famous opening sentence of L.P. Hartley's novel, The Go-Between. They do things differently there. See, the theorist's idea. They say everything is different in the foreign country. Everything is new. So, at this moment, it is very difficult, very risky to live in a new situation, new land, in a new place, with a new persons. In the namesake, there is a picture of marginalized gender characters in the form of Ashima and Maushmi. Ashima is, of course, married to an unknown person whose name too is unknown to her. So, we could say this. In the earlier days, in India, in all the villages, only the male, fixes, decides. So, even during the marriage, the women, the ladies are not able to give their consents. In the same way, Ashima is also doing. Just she nods her head when she is going to marry her would-be. So, however, she loves her husband gradually and performs her gender role as a successful homemaker to her ability, though there are strangers who surround her. See, in the hospital scene, she experiences the solitude very badly. She says, it is the first time in her life she has slept alone, surrounded by strangers. In the hospital, she is going to give birth to a child, and she looks at the people who are strangers around her. She is afraid. She thinks, see, if it is in India, then there will be no people. So India itself is my motherland, and the people who are in India, who are born in India, are my brothers and sisters. They will take care of me. I will talk to them. So in a way, I will escape fear. I will escape a problem. But here, nobody is there for me to help or to care or to just talk. Nobody is there. I am alone, she says. When the situation is strange, then surely there will not be any normality. Everything will be abnormal. Everything seems to be abnormal. Yes. For the past 18 months, ever since Ashima has arrived in Cambridge, nothing has felt normal at all. Everything becomes abnormal in unaccustomed earth. The novel of Jhumpa, another novel of Jhumpa. It's given. Adam is doing everything in his power to make Ruma happy. But nothing is making her happy because the land is something foreign. The land is new. So she's not able to be happy. The new situation becomes the hurdle for the immigrants, of course. in Interpreter of Maladies, another novel of Jhumpa Lahiri. Sukumar is the character and his wife is Shobha. They have lost their baby. Though Shobha was strong on her feet again, it was not a consolation. They missed their relatives, their friends at this pitiable situation. So there is no one is around her to comfort her, to give a word of comfort. Yes, and she feels the absence of Indian relatives. The loss makes her inactive. Earlier she used to put her coat on a hanger, her sneakers in the closet, and she paid bills as soon as they came. But now what happens? She treated the house of it, she treated the house as if it were a hotel. She doesn't bother about it because she thinks this place is something abnormal, so I cannot go along with it. I cannot cooperate with the present new situation. Yeah, the new situation collapses the normal happiness of the family. It collapses the everyday activity of the family. In unaccustomed earth, Ruma feels self-conscious of her successful life with Adam, and at the same time she felt a quiet slap of rejection gathering from his continued silence. The lifestyle of the first generation was unaccustomed and different from their own nation. Mr. Ashok and Mrs. Ashima come under the first generation Indians in the namesake. Their lifestyle is very different from Americans, and they are not able to cope up with the lifestyle of the Americans. In only goodness of unaccustomed earth, Rahul is addicted to drinks, and his parents strictly want him to get away with this practice. Though it is normal in America, the first generation Indians are not able to accept this kind of practice, or we can say habit, bad habit, which is very different from Indian culture, and in a way it is strange and new to some extent. First generation Indian parents follow the hard and fast rules that are pertaining to India with regard to the upbringing of their children. The known and accustomed culture clashes with the unknown culture. In the issues of marriage also, they want their children to have the arranged marriages because it is the culture of India. They want to follow the culture of India. So it is my culture. So the culture which I own always, everywhere, at any time. In going ashore of unaccustomed earth, though Hema has met Naveen before her parents, they find him for her. They ask Hema if he makes call to her and assume that she is single because she is shy, too devoted to her studies to bother with men. So they are in the foreign country. They cling on with the Indian culture. So that's why they don't want to deprive from the Indian culture. Always they want to stick with the Indian culture. In unaccustomed earth, Ruma's mother is very strict. So much so that Ruma never speaks to her English. Yeah, the language is forbidden. Though they are in the foreign country, the foreign language is forbidden in the family. Yes. Then now, next conflict is the conflict with fear. Sudden and unknown fear always surround the immigrants all of a sudden. There's no reason. They are not able to find out the reason why we have fear. some kind of a madness, some kind of fear. There is no peace of mind because of this fear. Lahiri's focus is on the hidden layers of the psyche and the inner turmoil of the characters who find them entrapped in the midst of two cultures that are clashing against each other. Pranab Kaku, the protagonist of Hell Heaven, was nervous, naturally, about telling his family that he intended to marry an American girl. At the same time, he knows that his family members also have the fear over the American culture, attitude, and the way of life. His parents were horrified by the thought of their only son marrying an American woman. A mere thought of the foreign name itself creates a certain panic and fear, and the parents living in the foreign land, the parents living in the local land, that is in the homeland, are not willing to get my son or daughter married to other foreign people. Next we see, in only goodness of unaccustomed earth, Rahul is left in an unknown place, and his mother and Sudha weep at the thought of abandoning him in that remote, majestic place. Why they are crying? Why they are weeping? Because this is a remote place, this is a new place, and there should be surely fear in the mind of the boy, that is Rahul. Remote implies automatically a big gap from the kith and kins, and when there is no known faces nearby, there is always fear. We cannot neglect it. In Hell Heaven, Usha's mother tells her daughter that she would not think she will get away with marrying an American, the way Pranab Kapoor has done. She says this from time to time, and this is because of fear that creates unexpected events. In unaccustomed earth, when Ruma is again pregnant, Adam encourages her to hire a babysitter, but Ruma thinks that the prospect of finding someone to care for her child in a strange place is more daunting than looking after him on her own. Yes, it is daunting. Thus, unknown places and the unexpected events surely become a great challenge for the Indian immigrants. We cannot neglect it. Next, we see the conflict with everyday life. The animosity with the present environment and the subconscious desire not to conform to the forced American way of life manifests itself in many ways and translates into Mrs. Sen's inability to drive in many ways. The namesake is an evocative and deeply felt portrayal of everyday family life and the complexity of relationships, the difficult process of trying to assimilate into a new culture and maintain their own cultural connections. It is a story about the assimilation of an Indian Bengali family from Calcutta, the Ganguly family, into America over 30 years. The cultural conflicts experienced by them and their American-born children in different ways with the everyday life, the spatial, cultural and emotional dislocation suffered by them in their effort to settle home in the new land. In Interpret of Maladies, Mr. and Mrs. Das argue about who should take Tina to the toilet because of the vexation of everyday activity of life in the foreign land. Even to toilet, to send the child is difficult for these people. Mrs. Das also reveals the disappointment of her marriage life to Mr. Kapasi. In marriage life, no one leads his family successfully without problems and chaos, and especially the American confused life becomes the additional burden to this unsuccessful life. Lahiri portrays problematic marriages in both first and second generation immigrants. Although Jhumpa and Twinkle are confident, independent, American-born Indians, they too have their relationship issues. These women are familiar with the American way of life, of course, enjoy the present pleasure of it, and cherish its individuality and speciality, but at the same time, they are struggling. The struggle is not away from them. It goes by hand, hand in hand, in their unique way, to communicate with their environment as well as their partners due to the unexpected and unsolved events in their lives. Jhumpa's husband Sukumar is himself a second generation immigrant, but the loss of their child and subsequent breakdown in communication eventually leads to a final split and failure. Twinkle's husband Sanjeev is unable to understand his wife's interest in the Christian concepts and the objects found hidden in their new home. The advanced American life fails in front of the traditional Indian ideas. Yes, this is true. For an example, we can say for the failure of the Americans, the reasons are the depression. So that's why often the people in America seek for the counselings. So this is a very big important job in America. Giving counseling is a very important one in the foreign countries. So in this way, Sanjeev is unable to understand his wife's interest in the Christian concepts and the objects found hidden in their new home. The advanced American life fails in front of the traditional Indian ideas, as I said. Unable to break free of his Hindu upbringing, he sees the objects as completely at odds with their own culture, cringing every time he passes the mantelpiece that Twinkle has proudly displayed the articles. Unable to reason with his new life or with a new wife, Sanjeev senses his ethnic uniqueness being threatened, whereas Twinkle resists this constricted cataloging of apt behavior. This everyday conflicting attitude to the Christian objects is a reflection of their diverse levels of cultural assimilation, which many of the Indians come across in their lives, even in the foreign land. Next we see the food. Food also occupies a significant place in the fiction of Jhumpa Lahiri to show how these metaphors are markers of cultural specificity and at times the markers of cultural hybridity. Normally, food represents the culture of any nation or region. Due to food and dining also, problem arises, and this everyday problem leads the family to failure since it involves with the economic conditions. A certain hardship is experienced by Gogol and Sonia in their childhood days. They are aware of their parents' relative economic inferiority. Then we see the conflict with the loneliness. Loneliness is often found in the foreign land because, as I said earlier, we don't have the relatives, our own kith and kins. So, automatically the loneliness preoccupies the immigrants. So this is another major crisis that disturbs the immigrants' lives in the loneliness. The namesake explores the themes of expatriate painful experiences and cultural dilemmas of the first and second generation Indian immigrants, in which the loneliness is one of the burning issues of the expatriate community in the nation of their choice. The past memories of the immigrants create such a loneliness in them, and they devastate their lives into nothing. The feeling that there was no single place where I fully belong bothered me growing up. Ruma is the younger mother whose father comes to visit after her mother's death, misinterprets his concern for her as disapproval. He in turn is too respectful to tell her that he fears she has chosen a path too similar to the one that brought her mother years of loneliness. We can also cite one more example in Henry David Thoreau's Civil Disobedience. Thoreau argues that I can't pay the tax which shows partiality. So the politics of the foreign country is something partial. Yeah, while the Lahiris and Desai's texts are framed by geopolitical concerns over British colonialism, American imperialism, capital's movement across borders, and legacies of uneven development, the achievement or denial of homes articulate their very different relation to the neoliberal exacerbation of inequality and individualism. The politics played by the local government has certain impacts upon the immigrants, surely. Current issues are very vividly shown up. Then we can also talk about the conflict with loss. Not only is the motherland of the immigrants lost because of their movement to another country, but also their new and the adapted one. At this moment, they experience their imaginary homeland. Lahiri stories narrate poignant ballads of love, loss, and death that are singularly beautiful and yet universally appealing. Thus, everywhere the people feel loss. When Mr. Birzada came to dine of interpreter of melodies, Lilia converses with Dora that Mr. Birzada misses his daughters because they live in a different country, foreign country. So it is a great loss. Missing daughters is something great, worse thing. Living in another country means a great loss of one's own country. Bharati Mukherjee's wife focuses the status of the immigrant women, social oppression, East-West encounter, and cultural conflict in the same way. Jhumpa Lahiri's The Namesake, located in America, brings her characters' struggle in assimilation and search of something meaningful. Even the immigrant writers think of their pitiable plight and place their characters in their position while writing. Writers in my position, exiles or immigrants or expatriates, are haunted by some sense of loss, some urge to recline, to look back, even at the risk of being mutated into pillars of salt in imaginary homelands. Rushdie portrays this idea. The next one is conflict with identity crisis. So this is very normal in foreign country. Jhumpa Lahiri, as a notable migrant writer, plays her role beyond the conventional wisdom, where she creates her identity as transnational citizen. About identity, Jhumpa Lahiri speaks in an interview The question of identity is always a difficult one, but especially so far for those who are culturally displaced as immigrants or those who grow up in two worlds simultaneously, as is the case for their children. Jhumpa Lahiri's first novel, The Namesake, explores the theme of transnational identity and trauma of cultural dislocation that affects the immigrants very badly. The children, Gogol and Sonia, like other second-generation immigrants, suffer with being American, but still having parents who are from India, thus carrying dual identity. Dual identity. So in a way, there is problem, there is difficulty, there is trouble. The immigrants face out of these things in the foreign country. Very beautifully, Jhumpa Lahiri has portrayed all these ideas and has given her works for us to meditate upon them. Not only meditate upon them, let us feel the reality. Let us understand the reality. The cultural conflicts faced by the Indian immigrants in assimilation of USA situation in view of Jhumpa Lahiri's select novels is or the eye-openers for the people who are settling in the foreign lands and who are about to settle in the foreign lands. Let us think and take the decision, proper decision. And we have to be very clear in our ideas, in our thoughts, in our decisions. And our lives will be really beautiful, really superb and fruitful always. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.